Okay, let us have a moment. Grant us, we ask, to speak, to hear, and to learn, so that our fears may be banished, our minds may become enlightened, our faith be increased, our steps directed towards you. Amen. When I was growing up, which I realize is a Shrek time, long, long ago, far, far away, my students sometimes ask how old I am. I said, you've heard of dirt. I said there was a time before dirt. Pre-dirt. Pre-dirt. And
sedimentary rock.
Yes. And country music was around then, of course, and we used to make fun of country music. And I remember thinking, country music had this kind of thing, my dog died, my truck is broken, my boy has left next door to see the 40-year-old widow with whom he's moved in. My daughter is a weightlifter, and I don't know what I'm going to do, Baron. We used to make fun of this stuff. But then, as you get older, sometimes you acquire a different perspective and some wisdom. And if you take a look at country and Western lyrics, one of the reasons it's so popular is because they deal with life and the stuff of life. Yeah, so I have a couple for you here. And this song was made popular by Rita Coolidge. And then, of course, Dusty Springfield sang it and a bunch of others. But I don't know if any of you remember this. And I played it the other day. Oh, it was terrible. I started crying. I played it. He says, what's the matter with you? I played it in the office, my office at home. And Rita Coolidge is belting out, I'd rather leave while I'm in love. Didn't even remember that. I'd rather leave while I'm in love, while I still believe in the meaning of the word. Too many times I've seen the rose die on the vine. Somebody's hearts get broken, and usually it's mine. So if you awake and find me gone, just carry on. You see, I need my fantasy. I still believe it's best to leave while I'm in love. The idea is while she's in love, leave before you get hurt. Because so many times she's been in love and she's been hurt. So she's in love now, so you leave before you can get hurt again. And that happens a lot, by the way. That happens a lot. A lot of people, they've been hurt and they get close to somebody and said, no, I can't go through this again, so I'll leave before I get hurt again. And that happens a lot. Here's another one. A riff on this is something that was Christina Aguilera got into. And because of her singing as a backup, which was incredible, this went on to sell, again, millions of records. Say something. I'm giving up on you. I'll be the one if you want me to. Anywhere I would have followed you. Say something. Say something. I'm giving up on you. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to you. Anywhere I would have followed you. And I will swallow my pride. You're the one that I love. And I'm saying goodbye. Say something. Person was in love and just couldn't get through. And you listen to a lot of the songs of country and Western music, and they're dealing with love and loss, and they're talking about heart. And the reason country, I think, does so well is because it deals with people really are. It talks about, now, you may ask, why are you bringing this up? Well, that's a good question. And the good question is because we are in one of those seasons that's a marker season. We are ending one season and beginning another. And with human beings, when you have changes in seasons, things happen. And we've got some changes in seasons. This is one of them. Summer's over.
No,
school begins.
September 21st.
Well, druids. Such druids.
I am descended from the Celts, so I got to keep it real.
In Miami, it's over. We've got a storm to prove it. Coming up the Caribbean, we've got a storm. And then, after that, you've got New Year's. And then sometimes you have Memorial Day, but you have markers, is what I'm trying to say. Where I'm going with this is, when you have a marker, a lot of people find that when you have markers, it brings out time to think about the past. And human beings don't usually do well when we think about the past. Do you all know the word rumination?
Yeah.
Rumination is a bane of human existence. You're sitting there and you're thinking about the what ifs. Margarita, you can read the what ifs for me right here. Just the first one. If you were the first paragraph, read it out loud for us.
Last night, while I lay thinking here, some what-ifs crawled inside my ear and pranced and partied all night long and sang their same old what-if song. What if I'm dumb in school? What if they closed the swimming pool? What if I get beat up? What if there's poison in my cup? What if I start to cry? What if I get sick and die? What if I flunk that test? What if green hair grows on my chest? What if nobody likes me?
That's it. The what ifs. And people do that. It seems to be endemic to human beings. You sit there and you have nothing to do, and you've had a whole day. It's a change of a season. You can feel it. You know it. And you start asking, what if? And you start going with that. And you also think about the past. And I don't know what it is about human beings, but we have a marvelous way of bringing up the past and making ourselves sick. And I wrote down some things that people think about regularly when they go think about the past. Bad relationships. Grant, you're young. You have a whole world ahead of you of bad relationships. Just for what it's worth. There's this thing I was reading about the New York Times, middle school. One of the middle school kids said, don't worry about relationships. None of them work. You're going to get out of middle school and it's over. Don't carry it with you. Because it doesn't, they're fleeting. I'm thinking, already in middle school, they're talking about relationships fleeting and gone. Already in middle school. All right, good relationships. A lot of you have had a good relationship, and you're the one who blew it. Oh, yes, and you know it. You know down deep that when it comes down to it, you're responsible for this. Maybe none of you have had that. Unfortunately, your minister has. I'm just saying that that happens. Bad relationships, one where you were responsible, or didn't look at Rita Cooley singing that song. Person left. They didn't want to get hurt. Age issues. You're going to love this. I'm too young. Or, I'm too old. There never seems to be a right time issue. I know when I was growing up, this is a riot. I remember 30 was considered like, I was telling Serge the other day, 30 was considered like, you're on the down slope at 30 already. And I remember when people were 50, it was over. 50 was Shady Acres. Shady Acres is waiting for you. Shady Acres Rest Home.
Or Century Village.
Century Village was out of there. Today, you hit 50 and it's nothing. But I'm just saying, growing up, I remember that. And age issues. And that always plagues people about that. Job issues. Have you ever had a bad job? I tell my students, right now, most of my students work. And I said, have you ever had a bad job? And people raise their hand. I said, I've got news for you. You'll have more. Everybody laughs. I said, it's endemic. Everybody has bad jobs. And I said, I remember when I gave the last lecture, I told about a couple of the disasters I had. And everybody said, that really happened? I said, those you don't make up, folks. You don't make those up. Bad jobs happen. And you think about that. Money issues. Everybody's had to face money issues. There is no free lunch, by the way. Let me help you all with that. Everybody said it, issue. The what ifs. Life has left me behind. I know a lot of people have felt life has come and gone. Where have I been? Like I've been sitting out and life has come, gone, and what have I had to do with it? And then I take a look at others. Faith. What does faith have to do with anything? Never helped me out. And my question has always been, in what do you have faith? That's one of those things we're going to be dealing with this fall. People throw these words around like faith and salvation and prayer, but does anybody ever really pay attention to what they can really mean for you in a healthy way, in a very healthy way? I hear all the stuff that's not healthy, but I want to know what these things can mean. What if faith is there? What do you have faith that gives you a ground, a sense of being, a sense of, I'm not a fan of Jesse Jackson. I keep mentioning this every other sermon, but he was onto something when he had people say, I am somebody. I am somebody. I have some meaning and I have some value and I have some worth. Now, if your faith doesn't give that to you, you need another faith. You need to get a new faith. You need to find something which you've had faith in. What does faith do? I don't know what kind of faith you have, and I just simply say that for me, it starts with religious experiences. I hate to use that phrase because everybody thinks a religious experience means like, whoa, but let me see if I can use modern language to talk about a faith. A faith experience is, to me, that kind of thing you feel. I think one of the problems, by the way, of liberal religion is too wordy. Wordy, 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 intellectual, intellectual. We feel things, folks. We feel things. Things happen to us. We have experiences. An experience that transforms you, that gets you away from me, myself, and I. That kind of thing I consider a religious experience. It gets you out of it. You sense that there's more to the world than just me, myself, and I, more than just the temporal things that we deal with. It's something that grounds you and you see something, you feel something that much stronger. So when I'm going to be talking about prayer later on, prayer for me is how do I access and ask for the strength to see all the things around me that can help me. I suspect, by the way, that there's a lot around to help us, but we block it. And that's a whole nother sermon about things we block. But if your faith doesn't help you, I would ask them, what is your faith in? And if it's in a bunch of words or a bunch of useless creeds or a bunch of things that other people said, what does it mean for you? Faith, if it is really, really strong, helps you dig deep. It helps you dig deep to get over things you have to get over. Everybody in this room has things we need to improve, things that we need to look at ourselves about and move on. And the question is moving on. But you can't do that in terms of digging deep. People are always embarrassed when I point out. Let me point out that when I went to rehab, I did it on my own. I didn't have to go. I realized that I lost a career because of alcohol. So I went to the doctor's rehab, the famous one. It's still there, Talbot Recovery Center in Atlanta. And I dug deep. It was it was not a healthy experience. And I'll tell you how unhealthy it was. At the very end, when I'm ready to leave, the pharmacist asked me what I thought of it. I told why I didn't have a good experience. And at the end, the famous Doug Talbot himself called me in and he said to me, I heard some of the things that you were talking about. So I went around and asked therapists about how they responded to you. And it turns out, number one, you took the MMPI test. You scored the highest we've ever scored. So the stupid idiot, I didn't use those words. He said the person scoring that went and told all the therapists they can't talk to you because you'll outrun them. You're smarter than they are. He said, then on top of that, you had ideas of what was wrong with you, and they thought you were manipulating the program. In fact, it turns out, in talking to the head psychiatrist, you were absolutely right. So you didn't get any of the help you needed. So I wrote up a bunch of therapists because they got in the way of themselves. So you tell me, do you want to stay? We'll pick up the tab for 2 weeks, and you pick out the therapist. You write the program. I don't think I've ever done that. But I have to dig deep. And so, dig deep. Now, let me just say something. I don't think there's anything particularly interesting about me at all. I'm 5'9". I weigh 150 pounds. I have nothing. My intellect is no better than anybody else's intellect in the room. It really, really isn't. If you look at my college transcripts, you saw my grades, you go, you've got to be kidding. If I didn't like a class, I got really bad grades. I flunked Greek. I got a D in symbolic logic. The professor said, how could you, on your final, you understood the theory. Now listen, you understood the theory of symbolic logic and got a 50 out of 50 points. But you couldn't do a problem. How could you understand the theory and not do a problem?
That was me in calculus.
Yes, and I said I understand that very well. I understood the theory, but I couldn't do it. Yes. And if you saw a lot of other grades, if I was bored, I don't know if you ever had this happen in college, I was bored. Oh, pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Something I liked was off and running. Yes, there we go. So there's nothing particularly interesting about me at all, except that I did some things that anybody can do. So when I said I went off and I dug deep, I assume anybody can, because I don't think there's anything particularly interesting about me, honestly. You could say, we have a doctorate. Let me tell you something about getting a doctorate. Anybody that has the time and the money can get a doctorate. Now, since this is going viral, there's probably somebody who'll yell at me for saying that, but it's true. Some of the most uninspiring, ignorant people I've met have had doctorates. Do you remember the famous quote of Walker Percy, you can get straight A's and flunk life? Do Did you ever hear that quote? You get straight A's and flunk life. Now, I'm not knocking academics, but I'm saying to be able to dig deep, you don't need a doctorate. You don't need a college degree. You need you. You need you is what you need. The other thing, number 2, you need to reach out. You know, we're all a bunch of stubborn people. Everybody you know is stubborn. Nobody likes to ask for help. Nobody likes to. You know that as well as I do. The house could be burning down. Alligators could be coming out of the moats. Barbarians at your front door. And maybe you text somebody and say, by the way, yeah, I mean, the house is on fire. What is wrong with us? All of us are that way. We are a stubborn bunch. And I'm not pointing to any, I'm saying all of us are like that. And there's something about human beings that we are stubborn. Am I not right? Am I right? We're the whole bunch of us. Yeah, the whole bunch. And you know, we're not too good about sharing our feelings because sometimes we don't like to admit we have feelings. Am I right? We try to bury them. I remember one time, and this is embarrassing, but it's funny, and you get a kick out of this. I had this thing after relationships and stuff. I had this thing about Claus's marital defense system. Out over there was a minefield. Then you come up here, there is electric barbed wire. Then there is a moat. Then there is a huge wall. And there's a huge wall. And finally somebody said to me, why don't you at least feed the alligators? And I thought, I'm looking at this, I thought it was funny. And I thought, that's really not funny at all. That's really, if you don't express your feelings and come to terms with how you feel. And I thought, for somebody who's a person of faith, you haven't let your faith in. I'm talking to me, myself now about this, but I assume that's true for everybody. Have we learned to listen? Yeah. Have we learned to listen? As we're trying to figure out who and what we are, have we listened to others? One of the funny things that happens, by the way, is when you're learning to listen, I'm going to embarrass my wife. Since I'm stubborn and I don't listen, and I tell the story, this is an example, by the way, of how somebody can say something in a few words and make a point. I don't and should never have a hammer or screwdriver or a pair of pliers in my hand, ever. I am absolutely no good at this. And I think I may have told you this before, but it's really funny. I was in the kitchen. I told Marguerite about this. I was in the kitchen, and I was ready to tear. I don't know what I was going to do. And Maria goes over and says, and said, Neth, that's not your gift. Margarita said something similar to that, too, when I was going to do it. She said, I really don't think you ought to do that. Do we listen? Do we listen? And then do we feel some more? If we're people of a faith, whatever that faith that grounds you is, have you learned to dig deep? Have you learned to reach out? Have you learned to feel? Have we learned to sense things? Have we learned to feel things? Have we opened up? The song is really annoying because he says things that speak to all of us. I hope you never lose your sense of wonder. That, by the way, is a sermon in itself. Is it not? All the stuff we're involved in now, all of us, have we lost our sense of wonder? You get your fill to eat, but always keep that hunger for life, the hunger for who we are, the hunger for learning. The president of Miami-Dade College in Paul said, why do you come back? I said, I want to learn from my students. And she did a double take. May you never take one single breath for granted. Taking things for granted. This is a sermon in of its sermons. God forbid you leave empty-handed. I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean, wondering and seeing all the stuff around us. If you can't get to the ocean, can you go out at night and just look at the stars? Oh, my heavens. Literally. Yeah. And see things and like, wow. Whenever one door closes, I hope one more opens. Promise me that you'll give faith a fighting chance and when you get the choice to sit it out or dance. I hope you never fear those mountains in the distance, nor settle for the path of least resistance. Don't let some hell-bent heart leave you bitter. When you come close to selling out, reconsider. Give the heavens above more just than a passing glance. And when you get the choice to sit it out or dance, or you can sit it out. You can sit it out. And what has your faith done? Nothing. It's left you sad, broken, empty, bitter, and incomplete. Or you can get that faith and dance. You can dance away the bitterness, the hurt, the pain. Get the wonder and let the faith continually make you whole. Dance and dance and dance. Amen.
Amen.